Go live. Woo! Good afternoon, everybody. Man, we got a special report today. And I tell you what, tariffs are so the key word of the day and the key word of the year. And look who I got with me, man. He's got his shades on because he can't deal with tariffs anymore. Hunter is in the house. What's up, brother?
This is because the future is so bright, Rich. I had to put shades on.
Dude, you know what? You look good with him. You should just keep on the whole show, man. I wish I could put shades on, but you know what? I'm half blind, so I got to wear these glasses all the time, man.
There you go. Why cheat the prescription? Now you know.
There it is, man. Well, hey, thank you, brother, man. I haven't seen you in a while, man. How you been?
You know what? Absolutely fantastic. Yeah, life is good. Family's good. Business is rocking. Yeah, things are going well.
Dude, you're like that 2%. It's all happy. Everybody else I know out there is complaining about what's going on with these tariffs. So let's just deep dive into this, man, because I got to tell you, here in the States, that's all you hear, like every 5 minutes about the tariffs, losing jobs and all that stuff. Just break it down, Hunter, because a lot of people, I don't think on all these platforms know what a tariff is. Can you break that down for us, man?
Yeah, I mean, a tariff is simply, a tax on imported or exported goods, period. And so typically when you're talking about tariffs and how they relate to you, now we're going to talk cross-border today as well. But, if you're in the United States right now, a tariff is typically protectionism around products and goods and things like that coming into the country that dramatically affects supply chain. In Canada, same thing, is to protect the country. Or, we're also hearing a lot of this, tariff war. So one sets up a tariff, the other sets up a tariff. Ultimately, just to clear the air, I've seen a lot of stuff on this. Tariffs get paid by the consumer when passed on by the companies that can't pay them and keep their prices the same. Period. That's it. Tariffs.
It's a trickle-down effect then, basically.
Absolutely is. So governments can make money in a couple of different ways. That's one of the ways that they can make them. Typically, it's used as a protection type item to ensure that your local economy and whatever environments, et cetera, are somewhat protected. And of course, it's a revenue stream for the government.
Dude, I got to tell you, I did a little bit of research here. It looks like Canada lost 62,000 full-time jobs in March.
You know what? There's no question that we're reeling, as a result of the change and frankly, the uncertainty. Everything seems to be going great until you start throwing words like tariff around. How's that going to affect you?
That's like the F word these days, isn't it? I swear to God it is, man, in 25. When you say tariff, everybody just cringes up. There's not one person with a smile on their face.
No, it's got two F's in it, so it should start with a capital F probably. But yeah, I absolutely hear you on it. It's one of the things that I want to open with too is the funny bit about opening with my shades on, that sort of thing. The future being bright. Honestly, the future is bright. I know when we're talking about tariffs, that's not something that everybody's going to say that's necessarily. Mm-hmm. Without question, we're always facing something, whether it's in our lives, in our business lives, in our personal lives, and there's always a headwind. There's a headwind of change. COVID was probably the last biggest one to remember. The one prior to that one, nobody can forget that. We're all trying to forget that one. Prior to that, we had the financial crisis in 2018, 2019. So there's just a whole variety of things. Every 3-4 years, we're going to get hit with something. And so those are economic headwinds. Whatever is going to change the dramatically how we live, how we operate, or what we can do in business. And the worst part of any one of these major headwinds is always uncertainty. It's not about whether or not a tariff is good or bad. We can argue both sides of that. It's whether or not we have any effect on what that change is going to be, or at the very least, let us know what's going to happen next. And that uncertainty, I think, is very intentional. It can be used as a tool, right, in the markets. Mm-hmm. Lots of people talking about different angles on that too. But that's really us as consumers and us as business owners. We want to know what's coming next. If it's going to be a 10%, a 25, 100%, whatever it is, what is it? So that we can start preparing for how we're going to respond to it. So I actually think that the biggest sort of, issue inside of this right now is the level of uncertainty. And that's where everybody's pulling their hair out. I think that's where it comes from. The majority.
They are, man. I mean, just look at the stock market in the last couple of weeks, Hunter, man. I mean, it's gone up and down. Remember, A week and a half ago, everybody said they lost all their 401k money. And then 4 days later, it went up like one of the highest spikes in like 5 years. So I think tariffs are like a roller coaster. Am I right?
There's no question. There's not many people, and there's not many things that can move markets, domestically and internationally, on policy or on their word. And certainly we're seeing that. And there's another good example of the winds of change. If you can move a market by saying, "Hey, buy now. Now's a good time to buy," and suddenly that day everything takes off. Well, we know why. We're fully understanding that if you remove the barriers, to either entry or continuing your business, or how we're working with our trading partners, life's going to get better, and everybody believes that the future is going to be that much brighter, right? So you say, "Hey, I tell you what, no more tariffs," or let's take this whole thing back another 30, 60, 90 days or whatever, the next comment is. It's going to move markets. And I think one of the things that becomes so important to us is how we operate within our businesses, how we're able to respond to such a crazy shifting of again, the winds, out there. I reposted this just to share, with those on my LinkedIn, that ships weren't built for the harbor. So the winds kind of suck right now, but you still got to get out there. And, when you're a seasoned sailor, you know how to tack into those, and you know how to handle it when that boom comes across.
You got it, man. Okay, so we talked about this last week. Canada got slapped in the face with emotions. I mean, can I say it louder? I mean, you said that, man. So give it to me. What's up north, man?
Oh, on the emotional side of it?
Yeah.
Again, it's rooted in not understanding the brain wants to fill it in. You ever do those ink blot tests and you say, put it in, you fold the paper, you open up, you go, butterfly. Okay. The brain wants to fill in the gap. If it doesn't know what it is, it says, looks like this, so I'm going to tell you this is what it is. And I think, that's certainly a part right now of the emotional side of it, because we don't know what it is. So we're trying to fill in the gap. Nobody's really telling us. Nobody right now has a clear understanding of where it's going to land, right? And that's why we're talking about it. That's why we're hearing about it. So the emotional side is rooted in fear, because when we don't know what we don't know, we tend to get anxious about it or fearful about it. And there's a good reason to feel that way in some cases. When it comes right now to the feeling, I think the feeling is more so around we're the little brother country, and we feel like we kind of got, one overed. It's like, wait a second.
A little gut punch.
Yeah. We're like, whoa, I wasn't expecting that from my big brother. So I think that's where a lot of the emotion's coming from. Generally, the feeling of the Canadian populace is, that we're unhappy, we're surprised, our feelings got hurt, really. And then we get into, unpacking that a little deeper, which is, no, there's a lot of money at stake here. There's people's families at risk. Someone's going to lose their job, or hundreds or thousands of jobs, and it's moving because of what is being perceived as, a political tool rather than an honest approach. And I think that's where the feelings come into play. We've got to be able to get to the point where we understand that we're not going to get kicked around by our big brother. But if big brother wants something, we're going to show up, and we're still going to be there.
Look at you. Just like you do in hockey, right?
This is the deal. We're still part of a North American team here. We know it. We can get deep into all of that, but you just don't play around with your closest friends, trading partners, brothers, if you will, without finally settling the dust and say, okay, the fisticuff is done. Now, how can we get back to it? Because we like, as a country and as a people group, if you will, we like to help put out the fires. We like to, send what support we can support. And we know that we're not, the big beefy brother. We know that. But I want to say this, and this is very important to, again, bringing it back to business. There was this old adage, and it's still around today, where if the U.S. coughs, Canada gets the cold. Okay. And that simply meant if anything went wrong in the U.S. to a blip, but they didn't really catch the cold, we would suffer for it. And I think part of that is happening again here. But one of the things I want to speak to is, for the first time ever in history, during the financial crisis, that got decoupled. So think about this for a minute. When the U.S. tanked and everything went absolutely crazy for U.S. citizens and consumers, Canada did better. our financial systems were stronger, our interest rates stay higher,
Mhm.
our dollar spiked, right? All of a sudden we look like this great big strong little brother.
You did.
So there is a decoupling effect, and it's going to be very interesting to see how this may or may not cause an effect and relate back to that. So yes, it's true. You're our biggest trading partner. Feelings are definitely important, and how do you basically how do you handle it? How do you handle it now, and where do we focus our time and energy and effort, and what possibilities are there when you run into challenges like this?
Exactly. And I think the big thing is being transparency. I think that it wasn't transparency. It just hit you overnight. I mean, can you go a little bit in detail, backstep? I mean, when you found out about this, what was like your country like? I mean, I'm sure they were pissed off, but like, was it shock? I mean, when it first happened?
Yeah, I mean, first off, we came into, we're coming into some pretty good economic times. Everybody was already a little worried about where some things may go, but the general feeling and consensus on the economy and business was, we're in a buy situation for employers. That meant we're hiring more than we had been. And of course, keep in mind, we're a little wary, right? COVID threw everybody for a giant loop, not dissimilarly. But at least in COVID, we all had to deal with it. We weren't on the backhand, and I think that's where the first reaction was, "Wow, we were surprised that we got the slap." But then, secondly, we thought, "No, really, no, it's not really going to happen."
They did that to us, right?
Yeah, I don't think this is really going to happen.
It's like a nightmare. You wake up and the next day, it's like everything's good.
Exactly. You know what? Maybe they were just kidding. Maybe they didn't mean to do it. Maybe they meant China, not us. Maybe they meant whatever.
Thinking with a C, right?
Right.
And then with an A.
Yeah, you sort of yeah, exactly. You sort of fill in the gaps, and you don't believe it for a bit, and then of course it starts coming to pass. And I love Kentucky bourbon. I love a good bourbon, and Kentucky's of course got some amazing ones. And in Ontario anyway, you can't go and buy that anymore because one of our responses here in the province was to take every single liquor item from the States off the shelves, no longer accessible to Canadians. And I thought, that's nuts. Like, it's a crazy response.
That is insane.
But again, here's what I want to dig back into, consumers and the business aspect of this. The consumer pays again. We pay by choice. We can't buy the things that we would normally buy. We can't, because there's this war happening, amongst the parentals, and all the rest of us, have to basically deal with it. And that's, if I had to unpack it back from how we originally felt, I think that was it. And now we know we're in it. So the real hope now is that, as you said, we get rid of some of that uncertainty. We get some of that clarity, put in front of us. We begin to have, or at least have the basis framework for how we can now develop our go forward plans.
And then you got the impact on employment, Hunter. You know that. I mean, all the jobs that got lost in Canada, here in the United States, we're gaining jobs, but unemployment's going up. So for long term, what's your take on this? Because I mean, this, from what I'm reading reports, this could take years after years to get back to normal.
It could. I mean, I have a personal take on it, which is, I think that.
Well, I want your personal take too.
Yeah, that's rather than just regurgitate what we're hearing out there. But I do believe that we are. I guess I put this out there, cautiously optimistic that we're going to see the dust settle this year. We're going to find out what those really are. We're going to find out what was real, what was not. I think some of it is political, not posturing. It's maneuvering to get an agenda filled that isn't necessarily tariff built or based, but it's a great tool. It's certainly got everybody's attention. And once that dust settles, and I do think that that's going to happen over this next number of months, so we will see it in this year, we're going to have a far clearer understanding of what we can now do to build around that, or to deal with what becomes finite, and no longer moving around on us. So that's my cautiously optimistic self. Now, inside of this, what I find, interesting about it is that, not all bad news is actually bad for business. It's certainly bad if you're in an industry that has been targeted. Automotive is one that I think we heard tariff news of potentially up to 100%, on Canadian vehicles. That's one that can destroy an entire industry, and it moves people out of long careers. Often, certainly in that industry, we've got organizations that are there to represent the labor as well, and so the unions are up in arms trying to work for and defend the groups of people. But there's really not much you can do if the business can't stay alive, right? So you end up losing tons of jobs, and that takes it all down to the families, right? So where are those people going to go? And one of the things, and here's where I think some of that opportunity is, as much as it's going to hurt no matter what industry, but let's just pick that one. Mm-hmm. Those are people that are going to need to move, and they'll get, those who have a little bit of money on hand and they don't have to respond right away will have a little bit more choice as to where to take their skill set, how to find another, parallel or comparable job. Maybe it's not an automotive anymore, but they're able to take all that great experience and apply it into a different manufacturing sector. There's lots of made in Canada sectors, that you can get into, or which ones are not, necessarily in the tariff crosshairs, right? So us in the staffing industry, or all of us in the staffing industry, I think we have to look at that type of scenario and say, yes, it's painful, but that is in part what we're here for, is to work with individuals and represent those individuals. Those are the candidates. Those are the people that need really good representation to find better jobs, better matches for their skills, better matches for their experience and so forth. So if we know, that's the certainty part. If we are almost certain, or we know that in that particular case, we're going to lose a whole bunch of people in that region or that sector, where is the most likely, this is where the thinking caps need to go on. Where's the most likely sector that you can transfer those individuals, properly represent them? There's going to be thousands of people in specific areas that are going to need to move. And those who don't have enough money, those of us who are still living month to month, or there's a little bit more month at the end of your paycheck, and you're thinking, oh man, how am I going to make it through the next 3 days? Those are the individuals that unfortunately will end up getting assimilated into any job. And that's the worst story to hear, right? Someone who's got all this experience, got all this knowledge, got all this wherewithal, and they get sucked completely into an environment out of necessity, out of need. They gotta work.
Survival, yeah.
Absolutely, So those individuals need to be looking, for somebody to represent them. And there's the real opportunity, I think, on that side, is how can we get a little bit ahead of the game? How can we think, we always say outside of the box, but literally get a little more creative about what is likely to happen, or if we know it's going to happen, then our challenge, or what I would challenge all of us to be thinking about, is, okay, where can these individuals best ply their trade, their experience, their know-how at a top-notch dollar, where other companies, let's say made in Canada manufacturing, here's a great one, where your supply chain isn't necessarily attached to the US. Supply chains are very complicated now. I can't think of too many products that are actually, organically originated in, and the end product, of all your inputs, and then your end product ends up, all being from the same country.
Doesn't happen, man.
No. And it's why this whole, tariff war is so heinous, if you will, for businesses, because we're attached to, 7 different countries, to produce one widget, whatever that is. So again, back to what our job is, in the staffing industry, it's how can we think through, who's out there that would accept these, what companies, what businesses, what environments are either made in Canada, which ones are going to bolster as a result. I bring up the made in Canada primarily because there's a push right now. I think Canadians, you guys may have heard this down. Have you heard elbows up yet? Have you heard of us doing it? We've got our hockey terms up there, and we're going to come out, and we're going to be bruisers. Maybe. So, but the intent is drive the consumer, or drive your feeling as a consumer towards purchasing products that are not going to be tariffed. And even if it's going to cost you a little bit more, you should buy Canadian. Now, I think there's some problems with that, because, most of us can't pay twice the price for something just because it was Canadian. We're still going to go to Walmart. We're still going to go to Costco. We're still going to shop at these places. But what if you can buy, Canadian goods at those places? Maybe they're American owned, but we can buy Canadian product. okay, now you're starting to make some sense here. So look at industries where it's made in Canada, where you've got that elbows up theory around it that are, driving some consumers, those who can afford to pay that little bit extra, or focus in on that protectionism type buying, because those are the companies that are going to go crazy. Those are the ones that are going to double in size. So they might be smaller now, because they haven't been selling to the US. Maybe they've been selling very little, but they're Canadian, or what. Now flip that. You say, okay, American, what do you do in America? It's not dissimilar. You just look for the different thread, right? So it's not an elbows up thread. It's okay, where are we actually seeing job growth versus, how are we going to be hit by tariffs? Are any of the major tariffs really going to hurt? Well, I can think of a couple. For the northeastern states, we've got energy that's a huge one. So everybody's going to
big time. Yep.
If we start playing that ball, and I think it was one of the things that we did see we're not going to end up doing, but they're using these as levers. So our job again is look at where's the lever most likely to hurt, and there's always that butterfly effect. So yes, there's going to be a lot of pain in one area. Where are the areas that are going to gain as a result? And there's dozens of them. And then how can we extrapolate that into the very people that we're representing, whether that be our clients, and serving them, or our candidates. Of course,
You know what I love there, man? You just put common sense in everybody's mind. Seriously, being proactive. I think the biggest thing is, though, these days, Hunter, is everybody panics. As soon as they hear something on the news, if you stop watching all the news all the time, you know what I mean? And then they panic, like, what am I going to do? Here's my question is, though, so all these people lose these jobs. Will these companies thrive back, like the automotive? I mean, are they, once the tariffs, get settled and all that stuff, I mean, like the Ford, the Chevys, all that, are they going to be able to handle that again and hire new or bring the old people back? I mean, what's your take on that?
What's incredible about change at this level is that it takes years or decades. So we're going to see some really hard angle changes, and we're going to spend years softening those edges, if you will. For example, let's say automotive, stick with that analogy or that area, if you will, right now, because if the automotive in Canada moves to the point where we cannot support it here, we're not going to ship those cars to another buyer. So the owners of those plants will shutter them, and we will not see automotive again. We're not going to say, look at. I mean, we can talk about some U.S. history. Detroit used to be the automotive mecca of the world, certainly North America, right? And that became very untrue for a very long time, and then what happens is we go through a phase of where you've got to rehabilitate the city from the point of view or that economic hub, whether city, town, et cetera, with what's next. Because it's very, very unlikely that you're going to move major business back into a certain position. Now, some of them have a little bit more ability to move around. Amazon got rid of all of their ownership here in Canada from distribution, warehousing, and so forth. And everybody thought, oh my gosh, you got to be kidding me. Like, these are tens of thousands of jobs. What do you guys do? Right on the advance of the tariffs. Now, one might think they were in the know that something was coming because they seem to be very good on their timing. Not trying to suggest anything here.
Oh, what'd you say? A little insight? No, I'm just joking.
Yeah, you never know.
You didn't say that, did you?
Either that or somebody had a really good,
crystal ball,
timing. But either way, it's not that they're out of the country from a distribution standpoint. It's that they found another way to fulfill that. So you've got other companies that have taken over those distribution warehouses. They're the exact same ones that Amazon's chosen not to run themselves. And so, yes, you're going to lose a whole bunch of jobs over here, but in that environment, you're going to be still having all of those jobs required, all from warehouse right through to delivery and so forth. So again, it's looking at what changes and what can be rehabilitated, but what also gets shifted. So automotive is not one that's going to get shifted back. You're going to see a very, very different, shakedown.
So if you're a staffing firm in Canada or United States now, where do you go from? Like, if you're looking at this, and you're looking down the road for the next 6 months, this could affect your payroll, your workers, everything like that. What kind of advice would you give them or strategy would you give them, man?
These come, I give you a few, but I have to tell you right on the face that these come from clients of ours who are staffing firm owners. They're in the weeds on this. They're on the front line, fighting this battle. And so these are really suggestions that I've heard come from them, and I'm regurgitating them or rehashing them here for you guys. And a few of them are, for an example, if you're in manufacturing is being hurt in your particular region or area that you're serving, and that's one of your specialties or silos, then look in that manufacturing to not leave the industry, because manufacturing is still going to happen. That would be crazy. Don't go relearn everything. So the advice there was then pivot. So if manufacturing is, this wider group, and one part of it's being tariffed to death, and one part of it is going to, be bolstered as a result. We can go back to that food as an example, food manufacturing. We can go back to the Made in Canada example on that one. So look at who your customers are, or who your prospective customers could be that would use your skill and talent inside of the same industry that that you're working hard in, but pivot towards the ones that are not going to be in that crosshair, or less likely to be. Now, at the same point, other advice that I've heard is this: well, hold on a second. Let's go back to the automotive comment. If that's somewhere that I've been serving for years, and I know that this is very likely to get heavily affected, what do I do? Well, the opportunity there is lean into, okay, you're going to have to transfer a lot of those people out of that industry. So those people, you can talk their language, you can talk their lingo. Now there's going to be thousands more opportunities to help individuals. One of our clients calls it MVP, most placeable candidate. So you got these amazing individuals that can do exceptionally well in other careers, but they're not thinking about that. Those are the ones that I think are completely validated in their freak out, because they're like, wait a second, where do I go? I've been in this industry, for 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, longer. How am I going to parlay those skills? Well, imagine if they had, a staffing firm, well-heeled in their industry that reached out and said, hey, I've been a recruiter in this industry for 10 years. This sucks, right? Yeah, you think so? Yeah. Like, you still have your job, buddy. I don't. I know. Here's why I want to talk to you. These are all of the transferable skills. I've done the homework. Let's talk about moving you to another business. Let's now take you and some of the people in your industry that are likely to lose your jobs in that particular region, and let's see if I can help you get over here. That's exceptional. Like that's going a little further than, and frankly, that's exactly where I think we're going to do very well in the staffing industry, is leaning into the problem and becoming part of the solution.
You hit it, because all these manufacturing companies, automotive or wherever you're at, they're going to need staffing firms at 25 because they cannot solve it themselves. They're like, okay, we're laying people off, we're hiring people again. So I think staffing is going to blow. I mean, you've already seen the first quarter. I think it's been very effective.
You know what? We've had a rough couple of years. We all know that, both sides of the border. Had a rough couple of years. Numbers have been down. This is not helping anybody. Leading up to through the presidential campaigns, everybody always, right? We all thought, like the past, we all thought, oh, once we get through the presidential debates and everything else, and the person.
So time out. I got to ask you. So in Canada, you guys watch our debates all the time?
Well, it really depends, but yes, I mean, you have some very colorful debates,
they are entertaining, like WWE, right?
Ours are not necessarily as colorful, but
we're a little feisty down here in the States, aren't we?
You are a little more. We might be feisty, but we're quieter about the feisty.
Oh yeah. We have no filter, man.
So usually we'll expect that once, the president-elect has been chosen, that the economy gets back onto its tracks, right? Because everybody's kind of waiting with bated breath. Which policy maker are we going to be with? And no question, this was not dissimilar. But the first few days in office really is what everybody else now is talking about, right? And what we're handling or trying to deal with, right? So now it's about, okay, how do we navigate? How do we actually maneuver?
Man, these are wild times. I got to tell you this, man. Okay, so one thing that we have to agree on: Dunkin' Donuts and Tim Hortons are never going to take a hit, right?
Well, I don't know. It depends if we end up in the recession, at least north of the border that we're talking about. And I want to unpack that too for everybody, because recession is like a bad word. It's like,
that word is like,
oh yeah, nobody wants to hear about that. Nobody wants to hear about selfish people, but you need to take care of yourself, right? And nobody wants to talk recession because it all sounds negative. But recession is nothing more than 2 quarters back to back with negative numbers. Yeah, I get it. Nobody wants to see that in their portfolio. Nobody wants to see that in their business. However, a lot of business gets done through recession. And some businesses, again, who are able to jump on, with groups of people around them, peers that they can talk to, customers, clients, that sort of thing, that are willing to jive in these conversations and double their businesses through a recession. Well, how's that possible if everybody's down 16% over the last 2 years? How can we see that? And we see it because there are ways to navigate those headwinds. I'm a lover of Mark Twain and some of his writings, but he was also a very colorful human if you get into some of his background. And it's the whole idea of that history, sure as heck doesn't repeat itself, but it rhymes. There's always something that is going to be somewhat similar. And the only thing we do know about change, and especially when we're talking about tariff change right now, is that it is absolutely inevitable. It's just going to keep happening. So rather than freak out, take that extra energy, all those extra, endorphins and all that stuff that gets you going, and try to focus it with, some minds that are in your group, or reach out to a couple, because those who are doing business, and we all are, but those who are doing business in a more creative way, or like a chess game way, what are the next 3 possible steps? And not betting the whole farm on it, but the next 3 possible steps, the most likely steps. If you start focusing on that, it's amazing what we hit. We tend to hit what we aim at, right? So look at those types of opportunities, and then you'll be rather surprised, I think, at how well you can do in a negative environment.
Brother, man, you just summed it up, man. You make it so simple, that. Cool, calm, and collect, man. That's you, brother. It's like, everybody else is out there going, and you're just, in these 30 minutes, man, you have just simplified everything I think that should be on all the news stations in the United States and Canada, man. You summed it up, buddy.
Rich, I appreciate it. It's the half glass empty versus half glass full. And I'm not trying to be, belittling of any businesses out there, or people who are right in the face of this, who are looking at the hardest parts of this, because those are the things we need to answer. We need to answer our immediate needs, right? And those are, safety and our home and being fed and taking care of our families. And those are key. And there's some people that are really, being pushed around by some of this right now. But there's where I also come back to where I think the opportunity is for our industry. Our industry is about serving people. And I think there's a lot. I've had the absolute pleasure of working with a lot of people. And I know there's many, many more that think this way, that really take that to heart. So just like any other time or problem, when frontline workers, some were critical, some were not, construction workers couldn't go to their work during COVID, and let's lean in to help those people. By the way, money is a byproduct. We're all going to make it, one way or another. And again, not belittling the companies that are stuck in a niche where, is it niche or niche? I know. I got to use that interchangeably.
It's both. It's niche down here, niche. It depends on where you're at. If you're in the boondocks, it's niche, whatever.
Okay. But those who are focused on one that is being directly impacted right now are certainly the ones that are going to have the harder, road on. So,
man, well said, brother. Well, hey, thank you so much. And before we go here, we're going to lighten it up a little bit. Everybody knows what's going on social media in the last week. Everybody's doing an action figure. I mean, come on. I see this like on Facebook. Hunter,
I should have known
you or what, man? Come on, man.
Hold on. I'll do this. This is courtesy of my wife yesterday, by the way. She created that.
Look at this.
I think it looks like me.
It does. Is that going to be produced in the United States or Canada, by the way?
I'll have to ask my wife. It might be China. We don't know yet.
Oh, my goodness. But you know what? Hey, thank you so much, man. It's always been a pleasure, brother. I can't wait to see you at Staffing World. And if anybody gets a chance, man, make sure you check this show out, man, because I tell you what, you hit some major key points that, I'll definitely review myself, buddy. But hey, thank you again, man. And I will see you in October, brother.
Appreciative. Take care, Rich.
Anytime, buddy. See ya.